What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheetshaber. We are going to be doing a quick showdown slate Monday Night Football breakdown. And we're going to be trying to beat 1 million people in $1 million. And we're going to have to get a little bit weird with it. So other than my first initial advice on these things, which is always leave money on the table, Sheets, do you want to take it away? Any first thoughts?
Hold on. Let's share the screen. Okay. We're going to build it right from the beginning. So I guess the first thing we do is we don't play Dalvin Cook, right? So that's the first step.
That means that there's a second step. I think if you don't play Dalvin Cook, you should play Alexander Madison no matter what. I think you should probably play both of them together. That's what I would recommend.
All right. The next thing I would like to start with is let's start with your man. I mean, let's start off with Mooney. Okay.
Yep.
And we could just start right from there. So if you started off with, do you have any problem with him?
No, I actually have in my first build, and I don't know if I'm going to stick with it. I actually don't know. I don't think I will necessarily, but he was my captain in my first build.
All right. Well, like for example, I mean, you started with Mooney. Okay, seems pretty wise to put Foles in the lineup too, right? And who is playing tight end for Minnesota today? Probably nobody, right? So Irv Smith is out.
Well, they still have Kyle Rudolph there. Actually, I think is a pretty reasonable play.
Yeah.
But
what about? Hang on. If you want to like a little run back, what is Chad Beebe playing at 1K?
Do we need to go there when you can play Alexander Madison at 2K? That's what my issue would be, especially if you're not playing Cook, because that way you're. I mean, look, if Cook somehow gets injured or sprained, which he's done in 20% of the games in his career, now you've got a lot left on the table here. Chad Beebe, huh?
I don't know. Just figure it out.
No, I like the creativity.
So if we don't like we don't like Cook, we put in Madison, right?
Right.
So I presume, but Robinson's really good. Right. Mooney, we're locking in. So we have 3 guys with Madison, and then you could do. I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, I want to fill the whole thing, but you could do whatever you want, right? As long as you don't play Dalvin Cook, like you could play like a lot of good lineups, no, without having to be a freaking idiot about it.
Yeah, so I think there's a few interesting ways to approach this game. Well, one thing, we have no running backs for Detroit, except for Ryan Nall is not like a running back. He didn't have a rush last week. He only had targets after, but that was also because they were playing from behind, which is completely possible again tonight. I don't really know how this game's going to go. I feel like we get a different Minnesota team seemingly week by week. But Ryan Nall has not carried the ball one time this year. And the only other eligible running back is Artavis Pierce, who also has not carried the ball one time this year. In fact, I don't know if he's played a minute yet. So it's weird because Ryan Nall's price, while seems like it's overpriced, what I'm going to recommend people do with this situation, and let me just take a quick look and see how far off the board this will be. So this is my favorite. The only time I ever play Cordarrelle Patterson is in these situations, on these showdown slates, because he's active. He's involved in the game. He's going to get a few rushing attempts, and I believe tonight you might see him get maybe 7 or 8 rushing attempts. They might use him as the running back. They did that when they were down running backs against the Giants earlier in this year, and he ran the ball 7 times. So they can use him sort of as an extended running back to fill in for Montgomery in some sense. And he's also going to run pass routes. I mean, he catches 2 to 4 passes pretty much every game. And this guy, he's 5,200, which seems like too much, but I think it's because he's going to be getting some of that, some of the running game love. So he's my favorite. Not often because his price, he's going to be lower than 15 or 20% owned. Whereas if he was his normal 3.2K, he would be 1,000,000% owned. Does that make any sense?
Well, it's so interesting that you said that because, I mean, if you asked me what I thought of Chicago, I was literally, and we haven't spoken about this at all. Right?
Not at all.
I was going to suggest to you when I was looking at the running backs, I was going to suggest to you that Cordarrelle Patterson would be the leading rusher for the Bears. Yeah. And it's so funny. You just told me, just made me feel much better about how I was thinking because you just said exactly what I was thinking. I had him lining up in the backfield, sort of. You know what I mean? So I feel as though, and I don't feel it's going to be particularly sneaky either. I think that he's going to be much more popular than Ryan Nall.
I don't think so.
Really?
I don't know. We'll see by the end of the day. I mean, the projections are broken on Ryan Nall. That's kind of a joke to have him at projected at like 4 to 5 fantasy points. Are you
Right.
getting him any higher than that?
I haven't looked at any projections for
I've looked at projections, and I'm getting him at 4 to 5%, 4 to 5 fantasy point projection, but also projected to be owned 50%. I don't really understand why.
Well, that doesn't jive, obviously.
Yeah, there's something off a little bit about it.
Well, if he's starting in the running back position, he's that he rates to get about 10 fantasy points, right? He's not getting 4 fantasy points. It's not happening.
Right. Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah.
So has Mooney taken over that Anthony Miller place in our lineups?
Not entirely. Anthony Miller's been getting a ton of love as well. Partially because they've had to throw the ball a ton. But I'm siding with Mooney. I'm siding with the more talent that I think that they really like this guy. And if they could just connect with one of these passes, you look last week, five receptions on 11 targets. He had that game against the Rams on that one night. 3 of those would have been 50-yard touchdowns of those receptions that he missed, but Nick Foles just missed them. And the other ones, he also had 2 pass interferences that were like 40-yarders. So he can get, they're getting him active like near the line of scrimmage, and they're throwing him the ball deep. So I really, really like Mooney. This Vikings secondary is completely beatable. I actually would be arguing if we were playing on a full slate, all these receivers are in play. I'm probably more likely to skip Robinson, who I don't think has. So Robinson versus Cook, for example, I think you're better off. And now Cook is going to be more popular than Robinson, but not enough so. So I sort of would lean more towards siding with fading Robinson than fading Cook.
Okay.
And I also
because they're similar in that. I mean, if you fade Cook, you could play Madison, and if you fade Robinson, you could play, Mooney / Miller, right?
Right, exactly. There's no reason to get too crazy cute on these slates, but some people might talk about, C.J. Ham at 400 or Amir Abdullah at 200. I don't think you want to go down to all that. This is a big, important game. I do think they're going to feed a lot of Dalvin Cook, and I'm okay with the idea of fading him. I just don't think you need to. I really don't. I think it's easy to get those things elsewhere. His floor is basically as high as anyone you could possibly have in football. If you fade him, you play Madison. I mean, Chief, this is what I've said every show I've done, every showdown thing we've talked about. And I think it's been actually incredibly accurate, even though it may not always win everything. We've seen plenty of running backs injured. We've seen plenty of RB2s like Jamal Williams that one night, when Aaron Jones was the high-owned guy on DraftKings. We played Jamal Williams at like no percentage, and he puts up 20 fantasy points. These guys, especially when the week's going to be shorter, because there's been no sprint and there's also been no practice, even in a tough game, they're still probably going to get the backups are probably going to get a few extra carries on these short weeks. You know what I mean? And not to mention, you always add in the basically almost 20% chance that your running back's going to get injured these days, it feels like, in a game. And all of a sudden, playing the backup running back makes a lot of sense, especially when you factor in that Madison's had some good work, even with, last week Dalvin Cook went nuts, and still Madison had 12 carries for 69 yards. Those were late when they were up, but still, that's 12 carries for 69 yards. You tell me he gets that, and he's 2K or whatever.
One of the things that's interesting about the showdown is it just requires you and affords you the opportunity to analyze all the players, right? So this other guy that I just want to look at before we go to more Minnesota guys is Cole Kmet. So he's been getting a couple of targets every week, sort of, for the tight end. But I see this note that they might that he might sit. Okay. Then it says that if he sits, Demetrius Harris and J.P. Holtz figure to see more playing time. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on, right? I mean, again, this guy literally, like J.P. Holtz, for example, has literally 0 targets the whole season. And who's the other guy? Harris has.
Got a few.
Yeah, he has a couple. So that is definitely something to look at. And, Jimmy Graham's not going to play every snap. So I do think that, it's just something to watch. We got nothing else to do tonight, right? So
right.
Watch for the so fine. That's what it's come down to. Watch for the injury or the status of Cole Kmet, right? So if Cole Kmet is out at 800, then maybe we could play these other guys at 200 or something like that. So that's the other thing that I made note of on the Chicago side. Minnesota, we talked about a lot. We talked about the ancillary piece a little bit, like Madison, and I brought up what's his face, Chad Beebe. But what about the good guys? Like, what about Cousins? It's funny, say Cousins good, right? Cousins, Thielen, Justin Jefferson. Do you have any preference in that? And we haven't really talked about even what you thought the game was going to do. But what do you think? Do you have any leans towards any of those guys?
The guys who I would like. The funny part is, so you mentioned BB earlier. I'm not going to play any BB or Olabisi Johnson, but these are the kind of slates where you might think about it at certain times if you really wanted to squeeze in all these top guys. I think that Thielen, while he seems like the more obvious like guy you'd want to play here, I think I might lean with Jefferson. It sort of is trending his way. He's got incredible talent, this guy. He doesn't need that many plays to break you. He's got probably more of a home run hitting potential. I think it comes in probably slightly lower owned, but similar to Thielen probably. So I'm leaning a little bit with Jefferson because the savings, and I not that I need them that much. Like I'm leaving 1,000 on the table in one lineup, but I can't quite get Thielen in, but I can get Jefferson in, and that's sort of the way I'm treating it. I don't see a ton of reason here to be focused on Kirk Cousins. I actually really like both defenses a little bit, but I don't know that I'm going to be able to go there because I just feel like enough guys will get me 10 plus points elsewhere that it might be kind of thin to play.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've been looking at playing defenses and things like that. It looks like a good idea sometimes, but like the beginning of last night's game, right? It was like such an easy thing. Like it was pouring rain, right?
Yeah, both
you play New England defense, you play Baltimore defense, whatever. And for like a quarter, the defensive teams were all at the top of the leaderboard, and they all just went to the garbage can.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just so hard for a defense unless they get a pick six, right? Or unless they get multiple picks to outscore like five other dudes. It's just really hard.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's what they'd have to do. So I still think that they're in play here. They're too cheap, by the way. It's weird that they priced them where they did. Like the defenses on the slate should be a lot higher than 3 and 3.2. They should be like 5.
Right. Based
on the other comparable situations. So the defenses actually might stand out as being the best plays on the slate in terms of from a point per dollar perspective. I also think that there's times where I can make this argument for kickers in these situations, especially for the Bears, because they tend to move the ball, but they don't really score a lot of touchdowns.
Okay.
But I don't think I'm going to end up needing to go there because I'd rather just take a shot with Kyle Rudolph instead, and hopefully he gets in the end zone once and makes a few catches at 3.4. And that's a little bit easier for him. Maybe it's a little bit of an easier route for him. Although, you're going to get no ownership on, especially Santos. So I think I would lean Santos over Bailey here, but I don't know. I think that they're both kind of interesting. I think Rudolph is probably a little bit ahead of them in terms of plays in that range.
So what's interesting is that I was going to ask about the wind tonight in Chicago. I don't know if there is any. I don't know what's going on over there, but the first thing I was going to say is I don't know if I want to play kickers with wind. And yet on the other hand, if there's a lot of wind, then it's harder to complete passes. So there's more opportunities to kick field goals. So it's I don't know how I feel. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, no, I hear you there.
I will say this. I mean, talking about defenses is that you see the Bears and Vikings both at like 3K. I mean, I kind of just, not that you can't play them both. I just see Madison at 2K, and I'm kind of into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't understand people being afraid to play Madison here, particularly. This seems like a good spot. I mean,
the Bears play good defense, and they have what's his name, Khalil Mack, and he hits really freaking hard. You know what I mean? Like they really want to roll Dalvin Cook for like a zillion, like every snap. I mean, I don't know.
I'm with you, man. I mean, they're in must-win mode and they're on the road, so I think you'll see a lot of Cook feature. But no matter what happens, Madison always plays. Like it's not like he's a part of the thing. The early season thing people were talking about. I remember from the early weeks. We can't play what's his name? We can't play Dalvin Cook because Madison is just such a touchdown. He's gonna end up stealing all the touchdowns or whatever. He's only got 1 touchdown this season. But they will give him the ball near the goal line. I've seen them do that a number of times, even in games where Cook's there. So that, at 2K, literally, if he can get you, I mean, he's going to get 8 fantasy points most of the time here, I think, anyway. 6 to 8, probably. 6 to 8, I would say. Actually, that's probably a little bit extreme. 5 to 8.
Tell me more about your idea of playing the two of them together, Cook and Madison.
Yeah, so you play more the running angle from the Minnesota side of things. I think that this is a really good Bears defense, and I also think that there's a lot of weapons on Minnesota. But I think that Cousins going into that defense I think they're going to try and stay with the ground game. I sort of like the Vikings to win this game, so I think I would lean that they would be leaning on the running game more. And I don't think there's going to be a blowout either way here. But if there is a blowout, I think it'll go the Vikings way, and you'll see more Madison.
So what you could do, I mean, can you get away with playing, if you play both them together and the Vikings defense?
Yeah.
That's probably a decent thing. And you could even, if you did that, you could even put Cook in the captain.
Yeah.
And play some good players. You know what I mean? You could do other stuff too.
Yeah, you could throw in, the Mooney Foles. Or Foles. Actually, you could even do Foles. And then you've got, maybe you leave a little on the table, or maybe you mix some things around or something. But something like that makes a lot of sense to me. I think maybe you'd want a little more upside from some of the other guys. So if you put in, that actually could work. Then you play maybe that would actually work okay if you played Rudolph. Obviously, you'd want to get one more piece from Chicago, ideally, if you're going to play Foles, but I think that's okay.
Foles and Robinson, I threw the kicker in just for.
There you go. Yeah. So there you go. That makes a lot of sense. I'm suggesting to leave like more than 400 or 500 in the long shot tournaments tonight, at least.
Okay.
Just because I just think you're really playing against such a lot. Sheets, how many times have we seen it? I just watched the guy who won the $1 million last night. The other guy who won the $1 million, who I actually know and I don't like him very much, a couple weeks ago, and we said he basically just played the same plays, but he left 2,700 on the table.
Yep, that's my philosophy actually.
that's what these guys are doing though. They're playing the 10% to 20% guys, which is as little as you can get basically, and as much as them, and then they're leaving a couple thousand on the table and dealing with the variance, and that's how you can try and win these things.
So here's something. So I want to just. So I mentioned, I don't know if you watched it, but I saw. Yeah. So I showed how I sometimes use SaberSim to build lineups, because it'll put me on some crazy lineups, which I kind of like sometimes. And every once in a while, you'll get crap like this where you literally leave like 11,000 on the table. You know what I mean? And it's and I didn't create this. This is like I put my projections in, and I put SaberSim run its thing. And it spits out something like this as being one of the top 20, you know what I mean? Like with ownership, considered in like kind of lineups. And so I have no problem with this theoretically, you know what I mean? Like just because 10-6 left on the table, it's a freaking showdown. I really don't care. So you don't have to convince me of that. And then like you look in, where is this? Like I have a FanDuel one. I got 6,000 on the table with this guy. These are good. This is with nothing special. This is like Foles and the captain, Robinson, Jefferson, Mooney, and Anthony Miller. That leaves 6,000 on the table. Who's playing this? But they're all these guys are good plays. It's like, so,
right.
So who knows?
The only problem, I totally actually no, that makes a lot of sense. It makes perfect sense. I love that kind of thing. I think it's how you win these things. And I think that you can try to get cute occasionally. And there might be let's say when you got a team like the Kansas City Chiefs on a Sunday or a Monday, it's so important that you have to get Mahomes and those guys in, that you really want to try to get in one of these cheap 200, 400 guys. I just don't see it as being necessary with this Bears game. And I'm really hoping the ownership keeps people off of Cordarrelle Patterson, because I feel like it's a speculative play that too many people are on. But I don't think that they're going to go there more than like 15 or 20% at the. I don't even see 20% as being a realistic thing, unless they announce him as like the starting running back.
And I will tell you something else again. Dalvin Cook smashed the last couple of weeks, right? And remember the Bears. Look, we all make fun of these coaches sometimes, but they're not complete morons. Like coach of Chicago, they have Khalil Mack and a good rush defense, and they see that Dalvin Cook's racked up like 1 million yards every week. I'm pretty sure they're going to say, "Hey, dudes, why don't we just make sure that guy gets contained, and then we'll live with Cousins trying to beat us." You know what I mean?
Right.
So I have no problem fading Dalvin Cook, and if you do that though, like you said, I think Madison's a good play. And then I also do think that, if that's what they're going to do, they're going to funnel or put the guys in the box, whatever. Then these Minnesota receivers could be Chad Beebe season.
Well,
Or,
to that point, though, I actually think I keep coming back to Kyle Rudolph here. Like,
okay.
I see what you're saying about the BB thing. I just don't see that they would line up that many formations that would allow him to play, because it doesn't really make any sense. He's not even really necessarily a third receiver, and they have OBC Johnson they mix in sort of. But you know that Kyle Rudolph is going to be on the field, and he's getting work anyway. He used to be the touchdown machine. He's the guy you'd play and you just knew he was going to get the touchdowns. But now you've had Irv Smith take over there. He's obviously not the same Kyle Rudolph. But assuming that he's going to get, I think he's going to get a decent part of the work. I think he's the interesting part of their passing game, that to me, because he's going to be the lowest owned. And they don't really have, I mean, you could play Tyler Conklin. I just don't see the reason to play a guy who doesn't have a catch this year versus a guy, Kyle Rudolph, who's like a staple of the Minnesota offense and a game you must win.
Yeah, but since you mentioned it, who's that guy you just mentioned? Conklin?
Tyler Conklin.
So he's another possible.
He's their other backup tight end because Irv Smith's out. I don't think he's even played in it all this year.
No, I don't think so.
So, but he's the other guy, which makes it even more tempting to play Rudolph. Like, again, must-win situation. You're going to go to trusty like guys who you've worked with for the last couple of years. He's been a part of this organization longer than any player they have. I don't know. That's where I keep going. I just think Thielen and Jefferson are going to be very popular. And again, I give a slight edge to Jefferson. But Adam Thielen is going to go have a good like, it's not like he's going to go out there and put up 8 fantasy points. He's going to put up over 10 fantasy points most likely. It'd be very unlikely that he doesn't.
Right.
So you can, if you can find the one other piece to try and play all these big guys, I just think I'm going with the Moonies. I'm going with the middle guys, the Moonies, the Millers, the on the lower end, Kyle Rudolph. And that's how I'm trying to treat the passing game. And I'm skipping most of – it always makes me very nervous on a one-game slate to skip Allen Robinson, but I think that's the guy I would be willing to fade the most. And I guess my bold prediction of the day is that Allen Robinson is not the highest-scoring Bears receiver, and I'm going to bet that Darnell Mooney is.
Any opinion on the game before we wrap this up?
I think I like Minnesota to win this game. I think Minnesota is going to make a late charge to potentially run towards the playoffs. They're very talented considering how bad they played to start the season. They also had a mess of injuries, like 5 and 6 starting players out on the defensive side. That's a tough thing to come back from, and then it forces your offense into predictable situations. They also missed Dalvin Cook for a game. They've had some weird spots that have hurt them, and I think that. I think that they're in good form right now. I think even in the bad weather, if it was in Minnesota, I would think Minnesota would be a significant favorite. But the one thing that always happens is that makes me like the Chicago side, the passing game more than anything. They're going to have to throw the ball, in my opinion. One thing we do have to actually be concerned about is that there is a chance that if they're struggling bad enough, that Nick Foles could be benched.
Oh, okay.
It's just something worth considering. So before we fall in love with Foles,
so you know what? Then then. But that's fine. In other words, it's going to correlate or it isn't. If he's playing well, then your receivers are doing well. If he's playing poorly,
But a lot of those receivers can go off just in the last couple quarters in a blowout, even.
I guess so. Yeah.
So I'm not saying go out there and play Trubisky. I'm just saying that just keep that in mind with playing Foles. He's definitely less safe than Cousins, but probably carries a little bit more upside and will definitely have lower ownership.
What's the Bears' record now? They're still like something in 3, right?
5-4, are they? I believe 5-3. 5-3.
Yeah, I don't know if
that might be right. They might have had a week out. I think it's something like that.
Yeah. So.
So what do you like for the game?
I don't know. I think it's unfortunately I think it's going to be kind of an ugly one.
Yeah.
I guess I like the under. If I had to.
Ooh, that's a low under to go under.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. It looks like so low. How it's possibly going to go under? So that's why I like it. So that's I guess what I like. What's the spread on the game?
Spread's 3.5 for Minnesota.
Yeah.
I
don't know. Again, this is where I would outthink myself. I'd be like, you get the Bears at 5-3 at home plus 3.5. Why wouldn't people do that? I'm like, well, maybe because that's why you're supposed to take Minnesota. I don't know. Yeah. So I really have no opinion on the game. I'll go with the under then.
All right, I'm going to go with the over on top of that. I just feel like this feels like a very, very low total. And if this game was in Minnesota, I think you would see like a 50-plus total. I really do. So
you'll notice, by the way, that I didn't even ask what the total was. I just said I'm going to go under.
Oh, it's 43.5.
Oh, that's really low. So we're definitely under.
I already promised you right now, Sheets is a lock. So you know what? Maybe you do play both defenses and both kickers, and then you just put in the 2 highest price guys and figure it out from there.
There you go.
There's the winning strategy. By the way, it's not out of the realm of possibility if it's ugly enough that could happen.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, this was good. This was fun to do this. Guys, we will be back with you later this week for a football show for week 11. And yeah, hit us up and let us know how you guys did this last week. Sheets, anything else before we're out of here?
Yeah, one more thing. Again, just based on that again, remember that Minnesota is trying to make a playoff run. And if they do get the lead, they are going to try to wind that clock down. You know what I mean? So I do think it could be I don't know how many fantasy points are going to be going around this game. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. All right, everybody. Good luck out there. We'll see you at the top of the leaderboards tonight. Somebody win $1 million and say thank you or say F you to me and Sheets. We just want to be mentioned when you win $1 million. That's really what we want. All right, guys. For Sheets, I'm Bobby saying good luck tonight.